Good evening and welcome to the Upset Podcast. Tonight, we're talking about abortion. Coming up next. Hey, you guys always catch me right in the middle of that groove. Once again, welcome back to the Upset Podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in on this Sunday evening. And guess what? The OGs are here. Hey, guys.
Happy Sunday.
Hello. We saw you jamming, man.
I know. I was like, oh, and then it just cuts off. I'm like, sorry. How's everyone doing?
All good.
All good.
Original
crew. Look at you.
I know.
Yeah, guys.
Okay. So how was everyone's Thanksgiving? That was this past Thursday.
It was great.
It was really great. Yeah. Really good. Much to be thankful for.
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
man.
I love Thanksgiving. I love it.
Me too.
And I was trying to see who we have joining us live. Shout yourselves out. Tell us where you're watching from. We always love hearing from you.
But I just want to ask, where was Tally for Thanksgiving?
I was with my family over in Jersey at my nephew's house.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
He's trying to catch. She kind of set you up.
I know he is. You know,
What's her name? What's her address?
brothers, my two nephews, their wives, a couple of in-laws, and all. It was really good. And when our family comes together, it looks like the United Nations. You know, we got folks from everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
It's really great. It was really great.
That's right. It's been a minute. You're right. Great to see you as well. Well, your picture, you know.
Wow.
Happy holidays.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hello, Carmen Davis from DC.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
So
right, Kevin.
Why am I registering for PELC and then I see Tally up there? I said,
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
And they've got me doing a
Big leagues.
workshop on
I
dealing with
know.
disenfranchised.
There were so many good ones. I wanted to come to your class, and there's so many good ones. I was like, oh, what do I do?
I want to. There's another class that's taking place that I want to go to. I'm trying to figure out how to skip my own class.
I was excited when I saw that, Tally. Really was. I'm really considering going. I mean, you know, because we have Pete's memorial that day.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm thinking about seeing if I could just leave from Florida and just come over there, because Pelk is going to be great this year. I feel it.
I
guys go live. Why don't you go live from Huntsville?
Did you say you guys, Chuck?
Live from Huntsville.
Love when he excludes himself.
You guys talk about Pelk. It'd probably be a good experience, you know, for folk to see you there and know exactly why you're there and what you're doing.
Hold on, let me just say this, guys. This reminds me of when we first started 4 years ago, right? Chuck was in the planning stage and we was like, okay, we're about to go live. He's like, oh, I'm a part of this.
I remember that.
Absolutely. Hey, Yvette.
Yeah, how about we fly you out first class and make sure you're there.
Yep, that's what we got to do.
Hey.
Happy holidays.
Look at me trying to like zoom in. Oh, I love family photos. So,
And by the way, this is the last day for you all to finish your Thanksgiving leftovers. Tomorrow it's going in the trash. In the trash tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
So enjoy your last day of
I'm
leftovers.
gonna go and eat again. Oh my goodness.
Let me start here with this turkey wing.
Now you can choose to be nasty, but those of us who know what to do know what to do.
Mm-hmm. So tomorrow's the cutoff. You've heard it here. Don't say no one told you.
I gotta eat again after the show then.
One more time. Marlena, you know I'm in everybody's business, right? How's school?
Dude, this is the last week of school.
Wow.
Just one more semester. Oh my goodness. I am so excited.
Marlena, have you given any more thought to what we talked about last time we were together? You
Chuck,
remember?
like there are 1,000 things on my brain.
Like, give me a hint.
And you
That's
agree,
what I
you
told
said
you.
that's a
I
great
remember
idea.
church stuff. That's it.
Well, it was about taking a pause so you can.
Oh yeah. I did give it some thought. I got to check on that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Gotcha.
They up here with these private conversations.
Yeah, I
don't
didn't know what you're talking about. I was just trying to be nosy.
Chuck was giving me some advice on maybe taking a break so I can get all my stuff done.
Marlena, to be honest with you, it's Chuck's fault too. One day Chuck came to me and says, I do this in the middle of the day. I rest in the middle of the day. I turn off my everything in the
He told all of us his secrets. Remember he told us to put it in his schedule.
But you know what? This lady, I've been to her church working with her team over there several times. This lady, if there were 27 hours in the day, she is incredibly busy and got a lot of irons in the fire. And I had a real sincere concern about you taking care of yourself. You're a hard working pastor.
I do a lot.
They have AdventistPastorsSingles.com. We could
I don't have time for that.
I will say this to you, and I don't know how Marlena views it, but pastoring from a single perspective, it does expose you to overworking. I mean, because there's nobody there to kind of keep you balanced, and I know I burned out. One of the reasons I retired when I did is because I burned out. And because I didn't have the counterbalance that I needed to tell me, look, you're going a little bit too much there. And so,
well, what do you do when it's your personality? Before I became a pastor, it was the same lifestyle.
Well,
what do you do when it's a part of it?
Typically, we marry people who have a different personality, and they'll be standing at the door looking at you like you lost your last mind, and say,
"You are not going back out there tonight.
Different tonight." And,
or they'll be like this. They'll be like this. Oh, don't go back in. I'll go. I'll go.
Yeah, I mean, it balances you, and
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Yeah. But Charles, you said you wanted to share something with us.
Yeah, excited. Anything that has to do with my people, indigenous people.
Right.
Yes.
I understand, and I believe I'm correct in assuming that the Commanders are going to rename their team back to the Redskins.
Really?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah,
I don't
see
that happening.
Yeah,
but then again, I didn't see
surprised. With some of the published stories, the reactions were very positive. It's like, oh, this is, and a lot of Native Americans, indigenous people were like, yay, we're glad.
Yeah,
because back in Redskins got their name back in 1933.
Okay, I heard this.
And
part.
At that time, I believe the coach and 4 players were indigenous people.
That's what I got. I heard that.
Wow.
So why? Like, what reason are they giving for wanting to go back?
Because basically,
tradition.
All of its fans were like, really? We can't get
hard to root for the Commanders. Just they're not.
Some of the comments were, it's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous name, Commanders. Come back to the Redskins. And as much as people thought, oh, that was defaming, Native Americans, it was not. Actually, back in 1933, it was in honor of the indigenous.
Correct.
So
it may have been an honor, but the term Redskin was a term that was used. That was a derogatory term. I mean, it was
right.
You scalped them, and to prove that you killed the Indian, you brought back the red skin. I mean, and so, but then again, look, with the administration coming in now, I will not be surprised if we don't have the Jacksonville Jigaboos and.
Negro region. Some kind of Negro group again.
Pat says it's the Native Americans' call. It is not. It is the call of an ethical nation, and that is, what will we accept and tolerate as being coin of the realm? I just, I'm opposed to it, but
I see. Well, Carrie asked the question: will it help them win?
They've been winning, though.
That doggone practical wife of Charles.
Hail to the Commanders. Wasn't
call them whatever you want to call them, as long as they win, right? They win.
Rochelle's watching.
Look it up real quick. It says that Josh Harris, who's the owner, said that the team will not return to its old name.
Oh, they will not.
We've been very clear, for obvious reasons, the old name can't come back.
Yeah, I would think that would be worse.
Well, other than that, the next team will be the Poughkeepsie Pork Monkeys. I mean, let's just continue with this thing.
We could have been the Philadelphia Pigeons, right?
Well, that's true. That is very
no.
Philadelphia does have a share of pigeons.
It does indeed,
I know we had this conversation before, Chuck. I want to go in your direction on this, but at my church, we had a presentation and the person kept saying Indians, and it was kind of jarring at me. I wanted to say something and I said, I'll leave it alone. Would you think that would have been an appropriate time to say, hey, we say Native Americans now?
Well, not even that. I mean, there are some indigenous people who would rather you call them by their tribe.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
As opposed to, you got Cherokee, you got Sequoia, you got, so they would, most people don't know all the tribes, but if you know the tribe name, they would rather you use the tribe name.
Gotcha. Man, we learn every day.
Yeah.
Indeed we do.
Okay.
And Chuck, what's your ancestry?
Cherokee.
African.
Right.
You know what? Cherokee. Oh, I wish you could show them some of the stuff in your office, but we won't take time to do that.
Well, you know what they call an African person of Native American descent?
On this whole thing about African American, I thought about the thing, and I was reading a little bit of history and of how we name ourselves. If you're African American, okay, how many countries are in Africa?
200.
And if you're from Egypt, or no, if you're from one of those African countries, wouldn't it be more appropriate for you to be Ugandan American or
I'm Ghanaian American?
Ghanaian,
but
that's I mean,
all it took was
African American. That's covering a lot.
One trip.
Tally, the girl took one trip.
One trip, man. Now you're going to change.
I was just curious.
Her name her name is Natasha.
She did her ancestry.com and she found out who she was.
Well, they claim me so.
Bless your heart.
All right, guys. Well, we have hot topic tonight, and we are jumping right into it right now because I know Tally is going to set us up for a great discussion, right, Tally?
I really wanted to be a part of this discussion because I think it is so apropos, especially during this season when this topic was a part of our election considerations. I want you all just to think back to a young lady in her teens. She's not married. She finds out that she's pregnant. There's some discussion about who the father is and what does she do. Many people would recommend that young lady terminate the pregnancy through a little something that we have come to call abortion. Now, we all know that, the issue of abortion, and it divides our nation into two camps. You all know those two camps by the labels that we choose. One is the label of pro-life, and then, of course, there is the label of pro-choice. Now, it seems simple. You've got two camps, one pro-life, one pro-choice, and then we try to understand, if we can, get a little definition working for us when we talk about this issue of abortion. Pro-life, if you take a snapshot of the definition, is based on the idea that every life is sacred. It doesn't matter whose it is or where it is, and that everybody deserves a level of human dignity and a level of human nurture. And therefore, this allows any action that would interfere in the promulgation and the sustenance of that life. That's pro-life. Every life is sacred. Every life deserving of human dignity and nurturing. Pro-choice, on the other hand, makes the statement that everyone should have the freedom to choose whether or not to allow life to occur or continue. After all, you know the old saying, finish it with me, everybody. My body,
my choice.
My choice is what people say. And they conclude that since life is defined by personhood, in other words, someone who has individual personality, they can think, they can reason, they can communicate, that a fetus is not a life. And so therefore, a person should have the right as to whether or not they wish to allow that fetus to become a life, pro-life and pro-choice. Now, here's the problem with that. That situation, fails because, capital punishment and war and poverty, all of the pro-life people, they always say, no, we believe all life is sacred. But then if you steal their car, they want to put you in the electric chair. So all of a sudden your life ain't that sacred. And in war, all of the pro-life people will strap a bomb on a plane and bomb the bejabbers out of a country of people that they don't like, especially if those folks don't look like them. And the same people who demand that you give birth to that fetus will then stand there after the fetus is born and say, you on your own now, baby girl. We're not going to give you anything. So the pro-life argument doesn't go all the way through. It doesn't wash completely. And then the pro-choice argument has some of its issues. They say it's my choice, but the fact of the matter is that in the 9th month, people who are pro-choice don't believe that you should have the choice to end the life of that fetus. There are limitations even in pro-choice, and who's to decide where those limitations start? And also, if it's pro-choice, then how come people who are pro-choice would take a person who wants to jump off a bridge and put him in a mental hospital because they say, you don't have the right to end your life, but if it's pro-choice, why don't you have that right? The real issue here, ladies and gentlemen, is that those two definitions, pro-life and pro-choice, really don't hold. They fall apart because what they do is they create what we call a false binary. Yeah, scared you there a little bit.
Yes.
Sound effects even.
You need to start living right. You need to start living right. A false binary is when a matter becomes so oversimplified that it appears it's either this or that, up or down, black or white, yes or no. And when it comes to abortion, people think, is it this choice or that choice, pro-choice or pro-life? The fact of the matter is that's a false binary. When you look at abortion, you have to ask yourself this question about abortion, and that is, what are the real questions? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you start thinking about abortion, it isn't, are you pro-life or are you pro-choice? I'm pro both. I believe people should have a choice. I believe in life. I don't know anybody who is pro-choice who says, let's go out and kill some innocent lives here. I mean, it's deeper than those two questions. So we ask ourselves the legitimate questions here. For example, what is a human life? And when does it actually begin? That's something you have to be able to answer in order to make laws about it. Mm-hmm. You've got to ask yourself, what are the conditions that exist that would allow someone else to deprive another individual of life? Because even in the Bible, there are situations where God said, if a person does this, take their life. So there are conditions, but what are they? And then you ask the question, is all human life really sacred? And is all human life really equal? And what are the metrics that you'll use to determine it? These are the legitimate questions we have to answer. Let's do a little exercise, ladies and gentlemen, as we talk about this issue of life. Everybody knows who this is. It's little Ralphie. Any cute. Ralphie right there.
Ralphie looks a lot like you, Tally. I mean, possibly
I have been known to run around naked, so yeah, that's Ralphie. Now, Ralphie's a beautiful, bouncing baby boy. Let me ask any of you: should anybody have the right to kill Ralphie? I mean, huh?
No, not Ralphie.
Because Ralphie, look at him; he's beautiful, and that's Ralphie. And we all know that little baby has the right to live, but we ask ourselves the question. That's Ralphie too. That's Ralphie at about 5 months. Same Ralphie. But Ralphie is now a fetus. He is inside the womb. Now, we can't hear him talk, but Ralphie actually has thoughts and feelings and actions. Ralphie can suck his thumb. Ralphie feels things from the outside world. Now, we knew that Ralphie couldn't be killed when we looked at him in the beginning. When we take a look at that one, should anyone, and you don't have to answer now, but should anyone have the right to take the life of Ralphie in this form? And while you're thinking about that, let me ask you about this. That too is Ralphie.
Mm-hmm.
That's Ralphie at about 4 weeks. Now, Ralphie can't suck his thumb right there, and Ralphie probably doesn't have a whole lot of thoughts going on, and there's no way the person who's carrying Ralphie might not even know that Ralphie exists. But that's still Ralphie. Same Ralphie that we fell in love with a few minutes ago when we saw his picture smiling up at us. Should anyone have the right to take the life of Ralphie at that point? And since we're talking about life, this too happens to be a little bit of Ralphie. That's a sperm cell. It's alive. Now, the question becomes, if you're saying all life is sacred, then does anyone have the right to take that life? Some people would say that the story of Onan in the Bible shows that God is opposed to the taking of any life, even the spilling of semen on the ground. The real truth of the matter is when we start looking at this issue of life as it concerns abortion, the Bible generates, and the spiritual talks generates more questions than any real hard answers. I mean, for example, when we really start thinking about it, we don't know certain things for sure when it comes, especially from the Bible, and that is, we really don't know what a human life is by definition. Is it simply biological existence, or does it have to have personality, or is it a matter of cognition, the ability to think, I think, therefore I am? Because if it has to have personality, a person who is in a vegetative state might not be considered a life. If it's simply a biological existence, then a piece of tissue that is kept alive in a laboratory, is that a life? Is letting that die murder? We don't know these things for sure, nor are we exactly sure when human life begins. I mean, a lot of people quote that text where God says, before you were formed in the womb,
Jeremiah 5.
But before you were formed. In other words, God is saying that your life existed before you even were material. So then, as some of our Catholic friends would say, birth control is illegal because it prevents a life that God intends to come. But we don't know that for sure. We also can't say for sure if all life is sacred. I mean, Satan is alive. And if you look at some people that I know, you'd say he's well. But is that life sacred? I mean, would you go to Hitler and put your arms around him and say, leave little Adolf alone? His life is sacred. Huh, really? And last but not least, how can we determine if one life is greater than another? In the days of the Bible, if you were the king and had royal blood and you were of royal lineage, your life was considered worth more than the life of a simple peasant. But we don't have those metrics anymore. In the United States of America, we don't believe that the king's life is any better than ours. The king, if the king gets arrested and convicted, he should, well, wait a minute, we'll move. We'll leave that alone. But these are things that we don't know for sure. And because we don't know them for sure, it makes us ask this question, especially if you're pro-life. How do you have the right to tell me that I'm being immoral or unethical if I choose not to give birth, if you can't answer those questions that I just shared? Now, we don't know the answer to those questions, but we've got to admit that there is something that we do know. On the other hand, even though we don't know those questions, we do know that Jesus told a story about a good Samaritan where a man encountered somebody who would be considered his enemy on the road, but he did everything he could to sustain life. And we are taught by that story that we have a duty to preserve life whenever, wherever, and whosever it might be. If we run across life, we are duty bound to try to help sustain it and maintain it. That's something that we know from what the Bible is teaching. Another thing that we know that the Bible teaches us is way back in the days of Pharaoh. Pharaoh decided that he would kill all of the children. This wasn't the only time that this happened in the Bible. In the days of Jesus Christ, Herod decided that he would send out his soldiers to kill all of the children of Bethlehem. What do we learn from those two things? That is this, that the destruction of innocent life or life period for convenience, comfort, or advantage is always unacceptable. Now, we learn that. We know that. We can't answer certain questions, but we know that the destruction of innocent life for convenience, comfort, or advantage is unacceptable. And now that returns us to our original question, this thing called abortion. What we end up with now is more questions than answers. But the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is when you tune in to the Upset Podcast, you're in the presence of the brightest minds and the most articulate of tongues and the broadest of hearts to answer the questions that need to be answered. So we turn it over now to this panel of experts, and I ask them, what say ye one, and what say ye all?
Go ahead, Marlena.
No, I'm not. When we think we're going to get answers, you will end up with more questions. We were doing this study before, and as Tally said, I mean, it's very unclear as to when life actually begins, and I think that's the whole issue with abortion. I don't think anybody want to think of it as killing their child, and so there's always that question: when is the fetus really viable? I think that's everyone's question and everyone's fight. And as Tally has said, I mean, all of us who feel that it is one's choice, we don't want to see a child destroyed. So it leaves you baffled. You don't know really what to do, but I know what to do if it's my case, but it still goes back to one's choice, Tally. I know what you're saying, but one even has a right to be saved or be lost, and that is death for that person. So,
we make laws to govern the extent of people's choices. For example, if you, Marlena, decided I've had it, I can't do life anymore, I'm going to go and buy a gun and shoot myself. The law allows for people to put you in a place where you cannot harm yourself, because even though it's your choice, you make laws to govern it. It's not Jesus, turn it off. And so, so we have laws that prevent people from acting on their choices.
Which is, well, I mean, because you could take that in another place, but I think that was the whole debate itself, that people should not make laws to control me and my choices. But I know you would take that in another place. But I mean, that's the whole issue there.
What?
Okay.
What is happening?
Is another sound effect?
It is a sound effect. I don't think it was mine.
I just wanted to bring up some other aspects of this in terms of deciding. One, I want to put out on the table the census. Some people say, well, if the unborn child, in fact, is a life, why isn't it counted in the census? Number one. That's just a question. I don't have an answer for it. I'm just saying when we're looking at the aspects. Also, if we could touch on two other areas that affect aborting a child, a fetus, whatever you want to name it, and that's one situation where the birth of the child could inhibit or threaten the life of the mother because of some medical, predisposition. And then the other thing is, as you well know, since the beginning of time, rape has always been used as a weapon. Even as we speak, it's used as a weapon in many conflicts. There are many women who have been captured and enslaved just for sex work. And they are put in a very, very difficult situation. How do you address that? So it's not as cut and dry as we think it is, but there are so many mitigating circumstances that we have to take into account. So just throwing that out for,
Yeah, I was listening to what you were sharing, Tally, and that question of how do we know when it's a life, that being the major question that people are using to decide whether or not they agree or disagree. And I listened to a lot of presentations on this topic, and I found a lot of those who are pro-life really don't feel like there's a question of when life is formed. For them, it's pretty much as soon as the sperm fertilizes the egg, it's life. There's no question to them. So like when we lay this out as what is it, for them, it's no question. It's really cut and dry. And so the discussion for many of those people stop right there. And so even Charles, as you're mentioning, situations where the mother's health is at risk. I heard one person say, well, that's a medical intervention, and that is the only exception. Yet I heard another pro-life person say, well, if God allows that. No, this is the analogy they gave. They said, if a parent saw their child running across the street and a car was coming, would the parent say, oh no, I'm not going to risk my life for my child. I'm just going to stay here and let the child get hit? Does any parent do that? That was what they were saying. So why should a parent make a choice to save themselves over the child? I had quite never heard that illustration before, but I think it's definitely different. But these are the types of scenarios that I'm hearing that are being presented to groups and groups of people as.
Yeah, but the straw man fails right there, and let me tell you why. Okay. It is typically the idea of how life gets prioritized is if a life is threatened by another life, then the life that is most innocent is guarded, and the life that is culpable is accepted as put at risk. And so that's why the country says we will execute you if you threaten the lives of others. That's one. Now the other one about a mother, if your child's running out in the street, and the mother will run out after the child. But if the husband with 3 other children standing there who are hungry and know that, he needs mama to feed them children, and that mother goes running after that one child, the husband will probably grab that mother and prevent the mother from putting the family at further risk by killing herself, and perhaps the child was going to hit by the truck. So it's not just the mother who makes the decision, it is the rest of the family. And when it comes down to a mother who is there in relationship with husband and children, or a child who is not yet born and who is not yet engaged, which would you choose? You choose the life of the mother. Now, and that's why, this one, whether mother, I love these romantic pro-choice, pro-lifers who, who go way, out on the limb to try to make their point. But that straw man, that dog won't hunt,
So there's a comment here. Thou shalt not commit murder. For the Christian, that should not be a complicated subject. This is some of the viewpoints out there. This isn't even a discussion. If abortion means murdering murdering a life, then it's wrong. That's cut and dry for them.
Murder is the wanton, unjustified taking of another person's life. And while I resonate with that last point, the question becomes one of the questions we asked earlier: is an unborn fetus a person? How do you describe personhood? And so if you say that an unborn fetus is a person, then you would consider abortion murder. If they are not yet a person, if they are a potential person, then that's different.
And I do think it's important, and you kind of alluded to this, I think, Marlena, you have pro-life and you said we have pro-choice, right, Tally? And a lot of people assume that those who are pro-choice are pro-abortion. And I think that I feel like there needs to be a distinction made between those two, because even though I may feel pro-choice from a legal standpoint, in terms of legislation standpoint, I am definitely pro-life in terms of my own choices and what I would encourage anyone who, ask for my opinion regarding something. But I still don't feel like it's my right to make that person feel the way I feel or have the same convictions that I feel about that thing, because to me, and I think we talked about this in some ways, in a lot of ways, morality cannot be legislated. You know what I mean? Like, you can't make someone do the right thing because you feel it's the right thing. You know what I mean? Because there's so many examples of trying to do that and it just doesn't work. It doesn't change. And from a Christian perspective, my thing is saying, I can say to you, you can't get an abortion. But if in your heart, there's nothing that you feel is wrong with that, or you're not moved in any way that this is against God or whatnot, that doesn't change the person because a law says you shouldn't do something. You see what I'm saying? Like,
here's the issue. And see, and this is why I approached it as I did. There's a two-pronged issue here. One is what can be legally mandated. The law, what they're trying to do, the pro-life people are trying to legally mandate that you cannot get an abortion. I don't think they should, because they can't answer certain questions. On the other hand, from the Christian community, the church community, even though we can't, for example, Tasha said, I can't, make people believe like I do, but we have been asked by God to compel people. The very word is used, to compel. And the values of the kingdom are supposed to be values that we try to get others to believe. I believe the church should say, we should say this, that we do not perceive abortion as a matter of after the fact birth control to be in accordance with the will of God.
I agree.
We should say
the church should say that.
The church should say it.
Yes,
and people get their own choice, but
not the laws.
Not the law. Yeah.
Yes. That's
that.
And another thing, I know you're about to say something, Chuck. I'm gonna say this really quickly.
Right.
It's almost like that. They think, that it is a binary choice, one or the other, and it becomes very complicated. And in the complication, they lose their own humanity, because you're willing to let the mother die at any cost just to get the birth of a child. And there's no remorse for the death of the mother. There's some issues with that. And when you don't care, then you're not really concerned about life. You're only concerned about the birth of a child in whatever state that the child will be. There's sometimes the baby is so defected that when they come, life will be short or not at all, and it can bring harm to the mother. And still, that is not a concern for many. They just think you should have the child regardless.
Yeah.
And so this becomes, to me, this is an issue between the person and God, because there's so many things we don't know, and God is merciful. There are things that He will excuse that you have no thoughts of. But if you're just saying, there's only one choice, then I think that we make issues there that we must consider, because humanity is always first.
Yeah.
Well, this subject is very complex, obviously. The human condition is very complex. I just want to comment on one thing and raise a question on another. Tally, you talked about, from a Christian perspective. I dug into what other religious orders say about abortion, and most of them, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, Tally, most of them, Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Judaism, Hinduism, all of these religious groups, almost all of them make the statement that they are against abortion, except in a case where birthing a child would cause detriment to the mother. Almost all of them. I found that to be interesting, willing to make those exceptions and clearly saying that the mother's life takes priority over the fetus. Okay. or the child, or I have to be careful what terminology I use. That's one thing. And please tell comment on that if you would. The other thing is, what role, if there is any, what role or right does the father have in the question of abortion?
That's an excellent question. I mean, because he certainly is going to have a role if that child is born, and if he doesn't play his role, the courts are going to come and take his stuff. And so he should have something to say. But on the other one, I think you're right, Chuck. I in the research that I did, I didn't see any religion that accepted abortion as a matter of choice. Simply, I'm going to have an abortion because I want to. I didn't see any religion that, quote, endorsed that.
Right.
While at the same time, they didn't, like ours, it doesn't condemn a person who makes that choice. But as far as the father having a choice, in certain states they do have a choice. But what happens is the sovereignty of the human body then comes into play. A woman is carrying this child, and as such, the state some states will say, well, since she is carrying the child and the child is a part of her life, her decision is superior to or sovereign when it comes to any other adult having anything to say about it. I think a father should have as much to say about it as a mother.
And it would be interesting to know what weight the father of the child has, whether they are married to the woman or not. So if you get, and it gets complicated. If a wife pregnant with her husband's child says, "I don't want this child."
Yeah, Chuck, there are high numbers of people who abort because the husband makes them. There's a large statistic of men who do that.
I just hope that the viewers understand that this is an extremely complex issue.
It is.
And it is not cut and dry. Because people, I've been in conversations when people say, "Well, are you against abortion?" I said, "I am pro-life." I am pro-choice. They translate pro-choice into favoring abortion. And that is not what I'm saying, and I make that clear to you. I am pro-choice. Well, if you're pro-choice, and that means you think it's okay. I didn't say I think it's okay.
Right.
I think a woman should have a right to choose. Now, this may not be a terribly accurate analogy, but because God is pro-choice, does that mean he condones lying? I mean, he says, "Yeah, you can lie. It's fine, because you have a choice to lie." Does that mean that God is for lying or for murdering because he gives you the choice to decide?
Yeah, I mean, the reason, the first few slides, we need to get rid of the false binary of are you pro-life or are you pro-choice? I mean, because the question is bigger than that. And, under what conditions? I mean, what definitions do you employ? But I also think we need to be clear, and this is where the Christian church has to step up. Because a lot, especially the Black church, because a lot of us don't like the platform of the Republican Party, we figure, well, we only got one camp to stand in, and that's pro-choice. When we're not pro-choice nor pro-life, we are something else, and we need to let people know we feel that life, whenever there's a possibility for life to be sustained without the damaging of other lives, then it is the duty of a Christian to support and nurture that. That's the Good Samaritan. That is opposed to what Herod did. That's opposed to what Pharaoh did. Getting rid of life because it's inconvenient or uncomfortable, or it makes me feel threatened.
And Tally, I agree with you that is the church's responsibility. But I will want to make sure that the church is not condemning or judgmental, because we can do that.
That is
and that's what I hear from churches now, and it's turning people off completely from Christianity. And so we have to be very careful that when we spread messages that they're full of the love of Christ, and that you meet people where they are, understand their situation, understand their circumstances, because if it's happened to you, you don't even know what you would do. I mean, you meaning
True. Yeah.
one. You don't know what you
Right.
only think you know. But if somebody raped you and the person, every time you think about that person, you crawl in your skin and you end up pregnant. You don't know if you will keep that baby or not, even when you know the moral thing to do. And so we have to meet people where they are and help them along in the process. And as you show love to people and share, maybe they'll make the right decision. I am a part of this is on my dissertation study, and I surveys came out, right, that 5% of people who have abortion have remorse, right? And it's called it can be post-abortion syndrome, or it can also be a part of PSD. What post-traumatic
PTSD.
my initials right, but that's only 5% of them, because the others feel, for what is so many reasons why people do it. And that's why, Chuck, I was sharing with you that a large number are forced by their spouses. And so people have various reasons, and you have to understand what's happened to them, or what they're feeling that's happening. And it's called a troubled pregnancy. And people are highly stressed at that time. And so the church must be very loving and kind and meet people where they are and nurture them along the way. And when and in my studies, when people who have had remorse about it, they said if they had the support emotionally and financially, they would not have made the same decision. But they are fearful of the church, and they are fearful of the community because of shame and guilt, right, that they feel because of the strong and what I want to say, the comments that come and treatment, yes, comes from the church, right? And so those are my concerns. We have to do it right.
Well, you know, people become like the God that they worship. People become like the God that they perceive. The unfortunate thing in Adventism, and I speak directly to us now, is, and I know this is, you know, this will get me fired if I was still working. The God of the God that Adventists worship is in a room with a bunch of books and files and angels trying to figure out how to get rid of somebody. I mean, that is the picture of God that most Adventists nurture or see, or at least they used to, and that God is in a room trying to figure out how to disqualify people. And so, and we replicated that. We used to do it once a year. Now it's like once every 2 years. We get a few of us together, get in a room, and we start pulling out the books and trying to figure out how to get rid of people. And they don't know that the judgment is that they've been investigated and judged. So somebody reads it in church on a Sabbath morning, and somebody said, "Move it, Mr. Chairman." Second, the next thing you know, you ain't head deacon no more. So judgmentalism is unfortunately a part of our zeitgeist. That's the first thing. Someone asked the question, are we still blessing the children of unwed mothers? And in this church service or in the pastor study? No. I did it right in front of the church. Everybody was there, because there's no such thing as an illegitimate child. There may be illegitimate actions on the part of parents. There may be untimely births, but every life is legitimate. And you ought to make sure. Now, you don't want to support behavior that you don't condone, but you want to make sure that people have the opportunity, that every child has the right to receive the blessings that God would give to every child. And we figured out ways to be supportive of parents who were not, I mean, look, I assure you the birth of Jesus wasn't an ideal situation.
Well,
you know, but
it's true. GP, you were going to say something earlier.
Yeah, I've been very quiet because, you know, I'm intrigued by this conversation. But the reality is, it's been mentioned, You cannot legislate morality.
Mm-hmm.
And people have stories and nuances and realities that they live. And as a church, what can we do every Mother's Day and Father's Day to be more sensitive to people's realities and experiences?
Mm-hmm.
So what can we do? Because sometimes we say things from the pulpit, we don't think about it. We just say it. Happy Mother's Day. Let's honor all the mothers and those who are mothers in the spirit. And we don't think about those people on Mother's Day or Father's Day who have scars and wounds from what could have been, what might have happened way back when. So
that's true, GP. I was thinking about that normally when we hear churches talking about abortion, period, is when they're preaching against it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking as we were talking, one, you said, Tally, our church, we should be, as a church, we should promote life. Okay. We should promote. Okay. But how do we do that? Do we promote life by condemning abortion? Or do we create spaces in our churches where when people are contemplating that choice, they have trusted people that they can talk to about it, or they feel like they have the right to think it through without condemnation? Because a lot of times people will not talk to anyone in the church about it because they feel like they know how the church stands on it. And if they even mention that they're thinking about it, that's instant condemnation. And I think if we come from the angle of almost like you did, Tally, showing, the reasons why, why life is important, why you should consider it, you know what I mean? Why you should consider life, as opposed to focusing so much on the damnation side of if you do it, you know what I mean? I think the perspectives of individuals as they think about making that choice would be different if our approach to talking about it was different, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, we can talk about it, but we always come from the cursing side of things. You see what I'm saying? Like,
well, cursing is a lot more fun for judgmental people, I mean, you never in the New Testament, man, when they got ready to stone somebody, they took up stones. What's this? I mean, the energy, it's people like that. I mean,
yeah, it's like,
I mean, learning how to be life affirming.
Right.
First of all, let's say somebody says, I want to have an abortion. Well, you still have a life to affirm, and that is the life of the woman who thinks she needs to have an abortion.
Right.
And you can affirm her life. I mean, even if she has the abortion, you still affirm her life. It's like when his child died that he had with Bathsheba. When the child was no longer there, David got up, dusted himself off, and said, "Make me a sandwich," because it was time to move on and affirm life.
That's incredibly true and important, because we have no clue what a female goes through once they've made that decision to abort. That sometimes follows that woman throughout the rest of her life.
Yeah.
You think sometimes, I think it, and me too, GP. Normally there's not much that keeps me quiet, but the reason why I'm so pensive at this moment is because just in these last couple of months or so, I've had family and I've had friends who have come to me to ask me my opinion on their wanting to terminate their pregnancy. It's hard. It's difficult. And one of the reasons why it's difficult, because we have been through our lives. So we kind of look at others, especially at a young age, and you want to make that judgment call for them and say, don't, because life is hard and life will be harder. And these are some of the mistakes that they make in their lives. And but here's the flip side, Chuck. I'm gonna go with this. But I've also in counseling, this is not pastoral counseling, who have sat down with people who are going through a mental crisis because of
terminating a pregnancy.
Terminating their pregnancy. Every time they see a kid at a certain age, they say, well, that could be, or this could be, or that could be. And it marinates, and They keep thinking through this to the point of anxiety and depression. So, you know, there's so much that we can get from this. I thought I was pro-choice until you came out with this thing, Tally, because
Ralphie.
Yeah, Ralphie bothered me a whole lot. I mean, it did. And it bothered me because, you know, Sister White makes a comment about unborn or those who are born, and the comment troubles me. I'm sorry, but it does. You know, it troubles me the same way it troubles me concerning slavery. The comments are close to the same. I wish I had it right here on the spot, but she's talking about as though they were not, that they would not rise in the second coming because they didn't know, but for the appearance they would. So really and truly, I'm sitting here trying to figure out what would happen or what would I do if I were in that situation. But I've leaned on telling, you tell them, yes, go ahead and do it, but in a different way. You know what I mean? You kind of say to them, you kind of give them a permission without giving them permission. Because if you don't say no, if you don't say don't get an abortion, obviously they're thinking the other way immediately. When they come to you on a spiritual level to ask you about it, is because they're thinking the other way, more than likely. So it's hard. It's hard to think about Mahalia Jackson, who came from a rape situation. There are those who, there's 64,000 pregnancies from the states that have banned abortions. 64,000 unwanted pregnancies. Pregnancies that come from rape. That's huge.
64,000?
PBS.org.
That's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was that many.
And we're not even talking about those who are getting away with the crime.
Right, they're not reported. Yeah,
we're not even talking about that. So it's hard for me to go with it and say yes, we should do this or we shouldn't do it, because the first thing we do is turn around and we look at the Bible and what does the Bible say? But then look what happened with Bathsheba and David. Correct, right? You skipped over this really fast, Tally, but this is where the Catholic Church comes in with the spilling of sperm, right? That it's a sin to do that. So then contraceptives or condoms or all of these type of things are considered to be a sin, depending on how you're looking at the Word of God, how you're interpreting it. It's wild.
There are some other circumstances that we have to take into account. And it's not that, here's another excuse, but in some of my research of how religious organizations handle this very complex subject, while they were against abortion, there were a couple of instances where they said they would accept it. And in one instance, several religious organizations said, if it becomes a financial burden,
right,
to the mother. Now, someone's fire back at that and say, well, let that be God's, God will take care of the child. But there are instances, maybe not as apparent to us. There are instances where a woman has multiple children and cannot afford to have another child because they already may have 5 children or 6 children. So there is a discussion of, well, here's a situation where an organization says, well, if you decide to do that because of financial reasons, they may make that an exception. Another aspect is many churches and religious organizations frown against it being a convenience.
Right.
If giving birth is inconvenient,
Mm-hmm.
financially, and all the other reasons, that they do not accept that.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the church certainly can come and play a major role. If a woman is distressed that she's not able to feed another mouth, that might be the opportunity for us to feed that mouth.
Yeah.
Or
Adoption. Yeah.
Yeah, and Chuck, that it's this situation is so complicated, as we've stated before, over and over, and many faiths have organizations that support pro-choice. Is interesting. There's a group that's called Catholics for Choice, and it's a ministry, it's an online ministry for women who have aborted or are thinking about an abortion, and they tell you you have a choice. It is your right. It is not the authority of the government to make those choices for you. I mean, they're huge, and they've got they give you spiritual support from the Pope and all those kind of things. And so this issue, right, as we have stated before over and over and over, is not black and white. But I am afraid, even with some of the comments that's being made right now, just from a baby blessing, I am afraid the church is losing humanity for people. And I'm going to say this, and I say it strongly, that God is the giver of life. And who has the right to refuse a blessing on a baby that has come to this world innocently? And we think it's okay for a baby not to be blessed in the sanctuary, and they've got to be blessed behind closed doors. And I'm going to speak to that, because that is not Jesus Christ. And so we have to let people's issues be between them and God, and we as a church should shut up, because we're not doing things right, and we're not representing Jesus Christ. And I'm firm about it, because we are a mean people oftentimes. And I just don't like it, guys. I don't like
I agree.
the church acts like it represents the love of Christ, and we're so far away. We're just so legalistic, and it just bothers me. It
Me
really
too.
bothers me,
Yeah.
because if my child is 10 years old, I know I'm all over the place. If my child is 10 years old and she is molested by some family member and she's pregnant, am I going to let my child have that baby? I don't know what I would do, but that's a baby having another baby. So when I say, the church, it's just so hard on so many situations, that it should be between the person and their God. We should love and support people where they are. And Pat, is that person makes that decision, but you love the person. We never lose
Yeah, that's
love
where it's
of
missing.
the person. You
Yeah.
support them, and you say, whatever you decide to do, I'm here for you.
Right.
God's grace is still God's grace. And you
Yeah.
help them to come back to that place. I was interviewing a young woman, and she says, Pastor, when I had my abortion, you don't know the state of mind I was in. I wasn't clear. I was highly stressed, and I was afraid. And my fear was of the church and my family. And so, who are we to say? That's why I just wish we would be real Christians and be supportive of people and love them through their situations.
Yes, yeah. I know we have to go. A couple of things. I think you kind of touched on this, Marlena. Comment. So if someone stands for the right, then that means they're mean. It's not. I don't think that's what anyone is saying. Go ahead, Tal. I see you.
Yeah, people have to understand that that the right must always yield to the good.
Right.
When they brought a woman taken in adultery, they had her dead to right, and they stood for the right. But Jesus stood for the good. And the good is life affirming, whereas the right is simply law affirming. That's one of the problems that we have.
Very good point. And I know this is the last comment. I saw Robert put this up earlier. I'd like you all to discuss how in the last election, voting a certain way means you support abortion and not policies that affect you personally. Let's follow that.
I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Give us a little bit more. Because I know there are.
He said it in the beginning, not me to make this go long. I think this is where Robert is coming from, that there are many who voted in the beginning. Tyler, you started off by saying this, which I know this is true from the people I know, that their voting didn't go for the person. It went for especially abortion. I don't even want to say pro-choice or pro-not, either abortion or not. And I think that we didn't look at the rest of the policies. I think this is where Robert.
Right. Okay. I thought that so too, but
we didn't look at the rest of the policy. We just it was heavy on abortion or not. I think
like IVF and things like that, and Yeah,
but I'm going to Marlena on this. Thanks for that, because I'm over emotional, or an emotional leader when it comes to a woman making a choice for herself and what she believes, especially when they come to the clergy, what they believe God wants for them. I think you're right about it. Let's just be supportive, of them, even if they don't know where they want to go at that point. Yeah. I could also say this. I do remember someone coming to me and saying that they wanted to have an abortion, and I couldn't make the choice for them, which I would never do that. I mean, but they ended up having the child, and what a blessing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, so it's like 6 over here, 6 over here,
Yeah, and I think the common denominator in what we're all saying is, regardless of what choice people make, you love them.
Yep.
Because there are people who will come get advice, still make the choice to terminate the pregnancy. And when people find out, they ostracize them. They don't want to have anything to do with them. You knew this was wrong. You did it. It's like, are we comfortable saying, even though I feel strongly about it, I feel like it's wrong. If you do this, will I still be there for you? Will I still show you the love of Christ? Is it possible for us to do that? I think is the question we have to ask.
I think we are, as a church institution and a church as people, we are struggling with the reality of conscience.
Oh, yeah.
Many years ago, I served on a board, and on the agenda was disfellowshipping a young lady for having a child out of wedlock. I asked the chairman for me to be recused from this vote. I left the room because my conscience said, I cannot be a part of this. Now, there are times when we should be allowed to act on our conscience, even when it goes against the rule of the church. Mm-hmm. But some of us are afraid to do that.
Sure.
We feel compassion and we feel sorrow and we feel like we want to support, but to take an action of support and outwardly show that you are giving support to someone who, in the church's eye, has violated or has made a violating choice. Some of us won't exercise that compassion because we would be construed as condoning.
Right.
And I think we run into so many situations in the church where our heart is saying one thing, but the rule of the church is saying something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree.
Well, wow, man, y'all got me, man. Today, I'm gonna have to go jog after this.
Well, we call the upset for a reason. We upset. You have to think about what you believe and why you believe it, and you also have to be willing to take what you believe and put it up against a few things to see if it still sticks. And I think that's what these discussions do for us. And I do believe ultimately, if we're promoting Christ, relationship with Christ, and letting the Holy Spirit lead and guide you, individuals can make a choice led by the Holy Spirit, and so that's why when we stand so firm on issues, but not those relationships with Christ that help dictate some of the choices we make, that's kind of where we go astray. All right. Well, thank you, Tally, for leading out. Thank you all for getting some feedback. Thank you all for sharing. I know even those in the comments, those who agree, disagree. But I think this was a great discussion. I think we should have more of these discussions.
Maybe we should Maybe we should have a podcast once a week where we can do that.
have more of these discussions, you know?
Well, Tasha, my final statement on this is no matter where you stand on this, right and wrong, and it's blasphemous or whatever, our one common denominator that we should exercise, and that is love. We have got to find love in our hearts.
Amen.
Yeah, even when you feel strongly about
you fall on this, whatever side you fall on this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
True that.
All right. Well, thanks again for being here. I hope everyone has a great week. You guys looking forward to a great week. December is here.
Yeah.
The last month of the year, and we're looking forward to closing out strong here.
December is always longer than my money, but go ahead.
This is true.
Take that to Tennessee.
All right, guys. Have a great week. Oh, sorry.
The Eagles are winning.
The Eagles are winning.
And side note,
put it that way. We haven't won the game yet, but
okay. Trajectory.
Yeah, there are 3 minutes left, and the Buccaneers are up 20-16.
Nobody cares.
Thank you for these updates. Some people, I know some people have 2 devices right now, just like our co-hosts here. Buccaneers, it's all right.
All right, everybody.
All right, guys. Have a great week, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.